It feels very different. I mean, you all can see me, but I can't see most of you. Does that feel different to you as well? No? Okay. I'm Reshma Krishnan. I'm a clinical psychologist and a psychotherapist, a proud alumni of this institution, right? Yeah. So let me ask you a few questions. So we are talking, our topic is misfits, right? So who gets to decide who is normal, who is abnormal? Like what makes a person fit, unfit, misfit? Have you ever thought of it? Like we sometimes use these words, right? This person is not fit for it, that person is not fit for it. So have you ever thought of like, who is fit, misfit, unfit? Who decides that? If not, as we go on, I hope you reflect on these questions and you might even see your answers changing. Why I'm asking you this is because health, specifically mental health, is often seen as something that is very, very personal. Very personal. Like all of the factors that happen within an individual. But to be very frank, it's not like that. Mental health, distress, diagnosis, all of these things are shaped by many, many other bigger factors. For example, the culture in which we live in, the policies that we are governed by, the power dynamics which, decides whose distress is seen and whose distress is ignored. Let me tell you one experience. One day, I sat across a young woman who hesitated to speak. Her eyes avoided mine. Her shoulders hunched under an invisible weight. After a long silence, she whispered, "Everyone says I'm just depressed, but they don't see why." Her words stayed with me because she was not just a diagnosis, she was a person shaped by rejection, resilience, survival, everything. But all anyone saw was a label. This realization transformed the way I see mental health. She came from a marginalized community, and her struggles were not just personal, they were deeply tied with the world around her. It was not only about neurotransmitters or a checklist or symptom criteria. Her distress was about the weight of systemic oppression, societal expectations, and the cultural realities. And again, this transformed the way I look mental health and mental health treatments or interventions. Because beyond the blue book, the ICD, the DSM, the diagnostic criteria, there is a person with a story, history, and a context. And if we stop at the diagnosis, we fail them. Does that mean that mental health diagnoses are not valuable? No. Mental health diagnoses are valuable tools. They give us language to understand, communicate between professionals, choose interventions, provide clarity in terms of confusion, distress, but they are just that, tools. Tools that often strip away context, individuality, nuances. And when we label someone with depression, OCD, anxiety, personality disorder, we risk missing the bigger picture. Nowadays, we all see, right, in Instagrams, social media, Twitter, everywhere, like, there is some dust in my, pointer. I think I need to clean it. Oh, I have OCD, right? I failed in an exam. Oh my God, I'm depressed. What happens when we reduce minor symptoms or minor distress onto labels or diagnosis? We undervalue the experiences the persons undergo who actually have these distresses. And moreover, beyond that, we risk missing the bigger picture. A lot of other factors beyond individual factors. Women are disproportionately diagnosed with anxiety disorders. But how often we consider the impact of patriarchal expectations on this statistic? Members of the LGBTQIA+ community face higher rates of depression and suicide, not because of their identities, but because of the stigma, rejection, and the violence they endure daily. Yes, diagnoses matter, but they are not the whole story. When we stop at the label, we inadvertently perpetuate stigma. We reduce a person to a set of symptoms, forgetting their identity, their history, their story, and their resilience. That is why we, mental health professionals, educators, families, society as a whole, must go beyond the blue book and see the whole person. And talking about context. Imagine living in a society where your existence is questioned, your identity is erased, or your potential is stifled. Now imagine being told that your distress is purely a personal problem, disconnected from the world around you. This is the reality for many individuals. In the beginning, I asked you a question. Do you feel different? That I can see some of you and many of you are not seen. Right? You told it's okay. But just imagine throughout the day, probably years, days, months, all throughout life, people are out there but not seen. Right? This is the reality for many individuals. Take caste, for example. In India, systemic caste-based discrimination does not just limit access to opportunities, but it impacts mental health directly. Similarly, women navigating a world rife with gender-based violence or queer individuals facing legal and societal hurdles endure significant mental health burdens. These are not isolated experiences. They are patterns rooted in systemic oppression. Not to forget, policies too play a critical role. When schools fail to provide inclusive education, children from marginalized communities are left behind. When workplaces lack anti-discrimination policies, mental health suffers. When healthcare systems are inaccessible due to caste, religion, class, geography, entire populations are excluded from care. And science support this. Mental health, trauma, therapy, whatsoever you call, none of these are personal. All of these are political. And to treat mental health effectively, we must understand the intersection of societal structures and individual experiences. But to be honest, despite these challenges, there is resilience out there. I have met women who have fought against patriarchy to claim their space. I have seen young trans men find strength in chosen families, and I have witnessed communities rally together to heal from generational trauma. The young woman I spoke of earlier, she taught me this. As we walked together, we did not just talk about her symptoms, we explored her identity, her community, her history. She spoke about the strength she had drawn from her ancestors, who had fought for dignity and equality. She shared her passion for poetry, which became her way of reclaiming her voice. Slowly, the weight she carried began to lift. Not because we erased her depression, but because we honored the fullness of her experience. And when we approach mental health with this particular lens, we uncover not just struggles, but strengths. A young man with severe anxiety might also be a brilliant artist, his work shaped by his unique perspective. A woman with OCD may have developed her meticulousness as a survival mechanism in an unpredictable world. A child with ADHD may be bursting with creativity, their mind exploring connections others cannot see. And this approach is not just compassionate, it's effective. So remember, every person we meet is shaped by layers of context. Their family, their culture, education, society, history. If we want to truly help, we must peel back these layers. We must move beyond labels, beyond the blue book, and see the whole person in front of us. And this is not just for mental health professionals, this is for all of us. Families, teachers, employers, policymakers, friends. Because how we see each other shapes how we treat each other. So I ask you, the next time you encounter someone struggling with their mental health, pause. Ask yourself not just what they're experiencing, but why. How has the world around them shaped their pain? And more importantly, how can we help them reclaim their strengths? Let's create a world where mental health care is not just about diagnosis, but it's about dignity. A world where we honor the complexity of every individual and the context they live in. A world where no one is reduced to a label. A world where we ask, what happened to you, instead of what is wrong with you. Because as David Brooks rightly said, a skill that can cultivate a healthy person, individual, society, family, etc., is to see the other person and make them seen, to make them feel valued, heard, understood. So let's create a world where no one is reduced to a label. Thank you.